This is the Lich Volatile zombie build that I've been using in Last Epoch to push to higher levels of corruption and defeat all the T4 dungeon bosses. I'm currently up to about 900, and as you can see, I still absolutely annihilate the boss. The build has decent map clear, it's very solid defenses, and as you can see from the damage, it's unethical. Now, none of this, to my knowledge, is bugged, but it isn't all perfect. This build uses an experimental affix on the belt slot. You also have to use the Jungle's Queen unique belt with this affix in order to summon a horde of volatile zombies whenever you use a potion. These zombies will then seek out enemies and explode, dealing tons of damage and returning a portion of ward to you based on how much HP they have. But what this does mean is that we are essentially an ammunition build. You have to find potions, otherwise you're going to run out of damage. But with correct gameplay and management, you can definitely do this, and I very infrequently find myself running out of potions. Now, there are the odd occasion where I do, and in some situations, in all honesty, I just die after completing the monolith to get my refill if I really can't be bothered to go searching. Now, I know I'm not breaking new ground here. I am new to Last Epoch, but I did find this build on Bilibili, the creators link I will have in the description. I did find the build there, and I'm given to believe this was a fairly popular thing in the past, but I did make some changes after playing it, and having pushed up, not seen many people playing it, I thought it deserved a bit of a spotlight. So credit where it's due. This is not my original idea. Some of the choices are definitely mine, but all in all, I don't really think you can own a build. I just want to give some spotlight to a cool build that I think people would enjoy to play. So let's start by talking about some of the key pieces of gear you're going to want if you want to try this build. This build will be much easier to pursue if you are playing in the Merchants Guild, as some of the items are quite rare and you do need them with legendary potential. If you're going to play it on Circle of Fortune and you've been fortunate enough to find these items, by all means go ahead. I personally am on Circle of Fortune, so it is possible, but you are going to have to play a bit and use your prophecies in order to get the items you're going to need. Starting out, the absolute lifeblood of the build is the Jungle Queen's Chaps of Holding. This increases your potion slots from 4 to 16, which, given the nature of the build, makes it playable. You can theoretically do it with only 4 potion slots, but you're going to have a miserable time, in my opinion, so I would not recommend playing this build unless you have this belt. Now, the affix at the top of it here, as you can see, volatile zombies summoned on potion use is again essential. This is what makes the build work. You can get this by combining a legendary potential Jungle Queens and an experimental item with this modifier on it. It has to be an exalted item. That's what I used initially, and that would cause 4 zombies to be summoned. Now I have one with 6. As you can see, the belt's pretty good. But definitely want this to get started. Next is a ladle. This is a pretty common unique that you get from exiled mages. And why it's good, it basically gives you a more multiplier of up to 48% based on the number of negative modifiers you've applied to the mob. So you've got slow, you've got frailty, shred, electrify, poison, all the ones already on the ladle. I've added on chill as well with legendary potential, and then there are others. You can get it all the way up to 8, so 48% more damage potentially. The drawback is obviously you get less flat, but we do compensate for that with some of our skill choices. You are going to want to get it with at least increased spell critical strike chance, as capping crit is very important for your damage on this build. I'd say after that, get crit multi, and then if you have the fortune, then go for the chance to chill on hit. Now, these final 2 mods are not to be ignored. Cast speed per 2 intelligence. We do end up getting about 60 plus cast speed from this, which, given how blood rip works with increasing our flat damage, is definitely not to be scoffed at. Cast speed's very good for this build. And then 1 mana gained on potion use per 4 intelligence. It's very, very strong. We're ripping through potions, which means we're also ripping through mana because we've got so many chained spells triggering. Mana becomes a bit of a problem, so being able to restore some of that mana on a potion use is very nice indeed as well. Next, we have the Cycle of Putrescence. This causes your zombies to have a chance to be resurrected, equal to 100 divided by your number of zombies. This can create quite a nice chain reaction of killing a pack of mobs, and then you can jump forward and all your zombies will jump to you that have been resurrected, and that is because of the experimental mod on the boots. This says minions teleported around you after you use a traversal skill. I have a fairly low roll on this. You would ideally want this to be at least, you know, T5. Mine's only T3. This is a shortcoming of my build personally right now. If I could get this up to T7, it would be phenomenal, but I only have it at T3. Definitely get this at a higher tier if you can, as what's going to happen is you're going to summon a horde of zombies, they're going to kill mobs, resurrect, and you're already going to be a screen away. So then you use a mobility skill, which could either be your reperform or your transplant, and then you're going to pull all those zombies to you, which are then going to explode again, and the cycle continues until you run out of zombies because your ring stops summoning them. I wouldn't solely rely on this, but it is a nice quality of life to the build that you wouldn't have if you don't have this affix. I played for quite a while without this affix, and the difference between having it and not is night and day, so definitely get this. And that's it for the necessary items. You do want a crystal skull with decent spell crit implicit. Mine sucks, it's only 3%, it goes up to 6. I've been trying to replace this item with prophecies for like 2 days now, and I just can't get a better one as I do need the resistances, but it is what it is. Next, we're going to talk about the skills. As I said, I am a Lich, and that is because Lich form is just super busted. I don't know, this is the first time I've played a Lich. This class seems really cool. We get a ton of armor for all of our int. We also get our necrotic res and our poison res just get solved for us. Also, we gain double potion health, and because we're converting our potion health into ward, this obviously gives us more ward. Phenomenal. We get increased damage, great. Swiftness on kill, which this can go up to 10% more move speed, and then we also get attack and cast speed. Cast speed is very important in this build because it's how we're generating our flat damage. We're using a ladle, so we don't get much flat damage. Instead, we use arcane absorption, which basically means when you directly cast Rip Blood and hit at least one enemy, you gain additional flat spell damage for 6 seconds. This is 8. So you gain 8 flat spell damage every time you use Rip Blood. Obviously, you just want to hold down right click in a single target situation, or just when you're waiting for your zombies to explode, and you're going to generate a ton of these stacks, and you're going to have a ton of additional flat damage to make up for the fact that Ladle doesn't really have that much. On top of that, we're converting our physical to necrotic damage, and then the health gained from Blood Rip is being converted into ward, as it is much more desirable for us. Then we have more cast speed. Also, our minions will prioritize the target we've Rip Blooded, so you can send your zombies at the priority target if you need to. Then we have, additional healing, more mana return. Mana is important in this build, and then we also gain more health per intelligence. So Rip Blood, phenomenal in this build. It all synergizes so well with what we're doing. Now we'll talk about Transplant, which is our mobility skill of choice, and you may be tempted to reperform around, and I definitely am all the time. It's so much faster, right? It's got short cooldown, but Transplant grants some great bonuses, especially when you're higher up in corruption. Getting this armor and less damage taken every time you use Transplant is invaluable. So you get more armor, you get less damage taken. So you can have basically permanent uptime on this buff, as this does only have a 3.5 second cooldown, and this lasts for 4 seconds. So you can have permanent uptime on Transplant, and which means you just have more armor and take less damage. Brilliant. Also, it grants you Culling Strike with a kill threshold of 15%. It also curses the target, which enables some of our passives. This is just a very good choice. Also, it can go you can travel extremely far with it, and it will pull all those zombies to you because of the boot modifier. So Transplant, definitely use this to get around. You may be tempted to use the reperform, and if you're in lower tier content and you don't need this defense, sure, you can just reperform around, but as you go higher up, don't fall for the temptation. Use Transplant. It's much, much better. Next, we have our Volatile zombies. So here's where the magic starts to happen. Of course, we have Path of Destruction, which is just some area. We get some healing when our zombies explode. This will be 0.8% of their max health, but then we get to convert that all to ward. So we want to scale a bit of minion HP in order to increase our ward. I started sealing minion HP affixes to just add in a bit more tankiness to my build. Definitely something you're going to want to do later down the line. Next, we have Fervor and Leap Attack, and now the key point, Grand Sacrifice. When a zombie dies, you have a chance to cast Sacrifice on another nearby minion. This is at 100% when you have all these points. So one zombie goes in, it dies, and then the sacrifice chain begins, and all the zombies and all your minions that you've got spawned will just proliferate. It'll just proliferate the explosions, and you'll do the damage that you've seen in the video so far. Next, we have Ferocious Horde, which causes our zombies to decay HP so that we don't have to worry about, well, how are they going to die? Well, they're just going to degen their HP and die. Then we finally have Shepherd of Thralls. So we summon a Skeleton Warrior on death, which is just another minion for us to explode. The same reason we're coming up here. Into Daunting Blast, Dreadful Horde, and Vile Force. We summon more minions on death. Corpse Parasites on zombie death, we summon 2. So just more minions to explode and keep that chain going. And then finally, for the Sacrifice Tree, we do have obviously all the more multipliers up here. We have increased damage from Great Sacrifice, 60%. 45% damage here from damage against bleeding. We are going to take some bleed chance to make sure we're bleeding enemies. 75% more damage here. Look at all this damage. Damage per minion, 4.5. Think how many minions we've got summoned when we're using this because of all these nodes, right? It's a lot of minions. Temple of Ore, Neurotic Audience gives, additional damage when we have more minions. Again, we have tons of minions. Sacrifice Chains. So it will recast on other minions. You'll just create that endless loop with your zombies. And then Sanguine Libation, which gives us that bleed chance so that we can proc punishment damage. Now, you may be thinking, why is this point here? Altar of Flames. Well, it does give this sacrifice the fire tag, which it wouldn't otherwise have, which synergizes with our Twisted Heart. It counts as an elemental skill, so we will get 8% of current health converted to ward. When you directly cast, I understand we're not directly casting it, but for whatever reason this works. So I guess you could argue if anything is bugged about this build, it is this. But this doesn't make up the biggest chunk of all the ward that we get, so I'm gonna give a pass on this one. You may not, let me know, but I kind of say this one gets a pass. For blessings, there are 5 crucial ones you are going to want to get. I'd say 4 of them are pretty much mandatory, with the 5th being just if you want more damage. That one being crit multi. Crit multi obviously is a great scaler for this build. I only have 403, so if I didn't have this, I'd be doing what, like 10% less damage total. So this is just 10% more damage, which is very nice. Crit avoidance, so that we can combine this with 1 mod on our gear in order to be completely crit immune. Additional armor, we get up to 2,300, and then in reperform 3,450. So we take 53% less damage, which is a lot, and obviously 37% less damage of non-fizz hits. So armor, very strong on this build. And then Grand Fury of the North, chance to shred physical resistance. All our damage is pretty much physical damage, so chance to shred fizz res is massive. And then mana, we do have big mana problems, so make sure you farm this one. You will have to kill Lagon a few times, which is always painful, but make sure you do it because it's very much worth it. Now for idols, I'd say the most important ones would be these that give you the potion health converted to ward. Obviously, given how reperform doubles the amount of healing, this ends up being a lot of ward every time we use a potion. Potions are the lifeblood of the build. Increase physical spell crit chance. Obviously, we want to be crit capped or as close to it as possible to get all the benefit of that crit multi we've got and deal tons more damage. So get crit chance on all of them. And then on the large idols, we have ward potion on use. There's also percent HP on your on this idol, but I went with the ward on potion use instead. And then for the remaining idols, I'd use them to cap your resistances, as I'm not going to show you how to cap your resistances with the build, as you know, it's kind of dependent on what gear you roll. I went with a cold res implicit here, fire lightning here, and then I can get like a couple of elemental res rolls, and it all balances out, right? That's kind of how I did elemental. And then the rest, you can kind of figure out. You don't need poison or necrotic because your reperform gives you so much because of all your int. So the only thing you really need to worry about is getting physical void, and these 3 are very easy to cap because of bases. There's even like fire res boots. Bases aren't too big of a deal on this build, I'd say, except for the crystal skull. You can kind of balance your resistances using bases if necessary. Now we'll look at the talents, and we're starting off in Forbidden Knowledge, 8% intelligence. The necrotic res is whatever because we get capped with our reperform, but we do like intelligence, so we've taken Forbidden Knowledge. Ward gained on nearby death, 52%, very nice, but it's only 10% chance, so we took a few of those just to fill out the tree. And then we got vitality and increased minion health. Obviously minion health is directly responsible for how much ward we receive when a zombie explodes, so minion health, very nice. That's all you're going to want to put inside the Acolyte tree. Next, we'll look at the Necromancer tree, and we are here getting HP. We're giving our minions some HP, and we're also getting a lot of ward granted on minion death, and obviously we're killing that many minions, so this ends up being a lot of ward, as well as a decent chunk of ward retention, to be fair. We also get to sacrifice a minion when we use a potion to restore some of our HP, and if we overheal with that heal, it will be converted into ward up to 500, so a huge chunk of ward every time you use a potion and you already have a minion summoned. And then a small chance to mark a nearby enemy with Mark for Death, which does reduce the resistances by 25%. This is very strong curse. Does increase your damage substantially, so definitely take that one. Now we're going to look in Warlock, and we're starting off with Soul Stealer. This gives us some mana gained back on hit when we hit a cursed target. Very nice. Also some mana regeneration, which you do need at least, I'd say, you know, 14, 15 more if you can on this build in order to be able to sustain all the, you know, the chain reactions and not be caught without mana too often. Then we have Occultist Mind, which obviously 8 int, but also 1 mana per int. This node's crazy. Warlock has some really, really powerful just outright nodes, and this one is definitely one of them. Mana per int, and obviously we're stacking int, so we're getting 132 mana from 1 passive on the tree. Occultist Mind is very strong for this build and very necessary. Make sure you pick that up. And then we'll talk about Lich, obviously picking up more intelligence and mana regen. These points are great for this build. Both the options are very powerful. We also get health and some spell leech, which is, you know, we're not taking too much damage, but when we're in reperform, obviously we want to make sure we don't leave reperform, so having some leech is very, very strong. A chance to summon some boys on kill. Very nice, more things to explode and turn into, you know, just nukes on the enemy. We're not going to use these guys to, you know, they're not going to get to use their sword and shield for very long. They're going to get exploded because we're not a minion build. Then Crippling Insight grants 16 flat intelligence, but it does reduce your health regen, but who the hell cares? We're a ward build, baby. No one cares about that health regen, and I will take 2 in per point every day of the week. Then we have 3 plagues, which we're only taking it for the physical penetration. We don't really get that much physical penetration in the build other than from this and our amulet slot, so make sure you take both of those. Then we have Deathbringer, which is a ton of critical strike chance and cast speed, which, as mentioned earlier, cast speed increases our flat damage because of how many times we can use Blood Rip within a 6-second window, and then obviously crit is just whatever. Dark Guard, ward gain on crit plus 10. Sure, every time we hit, which is a lot because of the amount of things exploding, we're going to gain 10 ward. Love that. And then Clairvoyant Insight for just 50 multi. Now, I do have 2 points here in Necrotic Energy. This is nice. It's definitely nice earlier on when you're not going to be just wanting to stand and use Blood Rip. But as you get higher and higher, you're going to want to build up the Blood Rip stats anyway. This does obviously mean you would have more flat without using Blood Rip. So if you're just wanting to power through maps as quickly as possible, then you could spec 10 points into Necrotic Energy, and you wouldn't have a bad time doing that. You'd have more flat. You wouldn't have to cast a Blood Rip as often. But I think at that point in the game, whether or not you cast Blood Rip won't really matter because of how much damage you deal anyway. So I'd put 2 points in here. Arguably, it could go into Mental Cacophony to gain more mana and ward retention. I may do that. Honestly, after this video, I'll probably put them in here. But yeah, that is the build. This was a very waffly video. I'm not normally just, you know, talking about a build for this long. I've had a great time playing this build. Builder will be in the description if you want to look at it and see how I've put things together and how you could emulate it if you want to. Also, the credit for where I found the build will also be in the description. You can check out Max Roll. I leveled this build using one of the Max Roll guides, the Lich leveling guide. Tons of links in the description if you want to do that. I hope if you do try this build, you have a great time doing it. And good luck with your fuses in the Temporal Sanctum. I'll see you next time.